Hello, from the Griffith Observatory's grounds in Los Angeles. My name is David Richard Sanis. I must say a few words about myself, so that my words have a mere possibility of being listened to and read in this internet era. At the age of 3, I was reading the Seattle Times and the Seattle Post-Intelligencer newspapers cover to cover. At the age of 7, I tested as having the reading comprehension level of a college graduate. I achieved an IQ score of 200 on the Iowa Standard, the Princeton Standard, the Stanford Binet, and the Army's ABC tests for intelligence. At the age of 22, I served as the National Security Agency's Deputy Chief of Station for the Central Third of South Vietnam. As a counterintelligence agent, I was responsible for the security of this nation's secret communications in the central highlands of South Vietnam. At the age of 22, I was also directed by Dernza, the director of NSA, to spy on all top secret only traffic in and out of Lyndon Baines Johnson's White House, and to notify Dernza of any factual mistakes in any such transmissions. At the age of 26, I was hired by the Boeing Aircraft Company as an engineer in Boeing's elite, quote, court of last resort, quote, engineering team to solve engineering problems that any of Boeing's divisions could not solve. My first week at the Boeing Company, I was named Boeing's Engineer of the Month for the entire company. Within 6 months, I was elevated to reporting only to a select committee of the board of directors of the Boeing Company. My mission was to solve engineering problems that other engineering groups could not solve. For the last 40 years, I have been an expert witness in many billions of dollars worth of construction-related litigation, acting as an expert witness in structural engineering, civil engineering, soils engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, architecture, and all the disciplines of construction, of buildings, bridges, and assorted types of structures. But my lifelong passion has been cosmology, physics, and magnetism. Today, I want to make a report to the suffering humanity of this planet about the status of my work. Sanis's Theory of Everything, dated July 2, 2010, by David Richard Sanis. First, I thank God that a creative genius at Stern, S-T-E-O-R-N, in Dublin, Ireland, did an experiment in 2006 that led them to confirm the practical implications of my work. It is the only hope that I see for the survival of the human race. I love their January 30th, 2010 proof of principle tests of my following scientific work. It was so simple. I similarly thank J.L. Nadine, the great French engineer and scientist, for his proof of principle test device. Sanis's Theory of Everything Preface. Experimental results of testing of my dark matter motor prototype conclusively prove that its output energy exceeds the input energy. My exemplary rotary and piston embodiments of this over-unity technology can be built and operated by anyone for the purpose of scientific research with my permission. The over-unity test results of the dark matter motor test stand prove that multiplied output energy does not come from neodymium iron boron magnets, metal at all, but rather from disturbances in the fields permeating and surrounding the metal. Since electrostatic accretion magnetic attractive and repulsive forces, electromagnetic and gravitational forces exist throughout the universe, one is inexorably led to the following logical conclusions. Space and time did not come into existence with the last Big Bang at time zero. Beyond the spherical universe, space and time do exist. Einstein understood that gravity was tugging at every bit of matter, so the universal bubble had to collapse into a big crunch under its own weight. So Einstein made up the cosmological constant, a lambda notation, and a lambda being simply the sign of infinity from Greek language, that expressed that empty space is not really empty at all. It has a latent energy. Friedman's mathematics and Hubble's astronomical observations toppled the lambda sign in general relativity. Einstein denounced it as his greatest blunder. My work, specifically my finding of the scalar particles by experiment, brings it back into the mainstream of physics. Christian Huygens, quote, unspecified medium of the transmission of light, like sound is a vibration in the air, close quote, is scalar dark matter energy that is equally distributed throughout the universe. Newton's three laws of motion must now give way to scalar dark matter energy theory mandated modifications. When Einstein observed, quote, for if no particular state of motion can be ascribed to the ether, there does not seem to be any ground for introducing it as an entity of a special sort, close quote, there was scant evidence of a scalar quantum soup universe. Dark matter motor test results likewise force the necessary modifications of the applicable work of Faraday, Maxwell, Hertz, Huygens, Fresnel, and Planck, among others. Fresnel's ether hypothesis was correct as far as it went. The H.A. Lorentz electrodynamic theory failed, moreover, to give an explanation concerning the tremendous forces which hold the electric charges on the individual particles. Close quote, by Albert Einstein. As Einstein once wrote, quote, now a question arises. Since the electromagnetic field exists even in a vacuum, should one conceive of the field as a state of a carrier, or should it rather be endowed with an independent existence not reducible to anything else? In other words, is there an ether which carries the field? My answer is yes. Meanwhile, particle theorists have realized that the cosmological constant can be interpreted as a measure of the, quote, energy density of the vacuum, close quote. It is a measure of the observable energy of the scalar in the vacuum. Even the conception of Born and Heisenberg that the physical world could be regarded either in terms of waves or particles is rendered susceptible to reanalysis by the prototype dark matter motor test results. Planck's law of radiation must now incorporate scalar theory. Planck's universal constant, quote, n, close quote, and scalar theory require science to find a new conceptual basis for all physics. My experiments result in confirmation of the statement, quote, quantum mechanics adds another contribution from the zero-point energies associated with vacuum fluctuations, close quote. The fact, discovered by Faraday in 1831, that an electric current can be induced to flow in a coil of copper wire when a magnet is brought close to it, can now be explained. It is a disturbance in the scalar fields of dark energy and matter. Ampere's circuital law and Gauss's law must both be modified to account for scalar theory. The same is true for Coulomb's law. Electric and magnetic forces are part of a single physical phenomenon, as special relativity postulates. Both are powered by dark matter scalar energy. the Biot-Savart law must also be modified to include scalar theory. Michelson-Morley did not preclude the scalar particle ether. Einstein's special theory of relativity and photoelectric effect did not destroy it. Scientists should look again at Einstein's statements, quote, "If Michelson-Morley is wrong, then relativity is wrong," close quote. Einstein did miss the scalar particle ether, and that forces modifications to the photoelectric effect, special and general theory of relativity assumptions, and conclusions. Sandus's theory of everything. In 1932, as is commonly known, the existence of neutrons was discovered at Cambridge University. That same most extraordinary site of scientific research had previously been involved in the realization that the entire sensible universe is made up of but 92 different atoms. More interestingly still, with the discovery of the neutron, it was evident that all atoms, from hydrogen to uranium, were made up of only 3 different elements: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Said protons, neutrons, and electrons in the 92 different atoms that exist in nature create each type of atom by being in different numbers in different arrangements. And that's an incredibly important principle. The universe is uniformly filled in a stable but dynamic manner with astonishingly tiny, nearly massless particles. These particles' axial rotations generate neutral charges of static electricity. The bubble universe may be envisioned as a balloon tightly packed with these particles, eternally jostling a myriad of others, spitting static electrical charges. These static electrical charges repel all identical particles and refuel all other types of particles. For example, the reason that photons can maintain a constant speed of 186,000 miles per second as they travel across the universe for billions of years is that these dark particles refuel them perhaps 4 to 6 billion times a second at quantum distances as they pass by. I name these dark particles as scalars. Collectively, scalar particles refuel all other particles in the universe with static charges of electricity. Scalars constitute all but less than 1/1,000,000,000 of the total matter and energy of the universe. What we humans think of as dark, empty space, dotted with, quote, "sparse points of light," close quote, is actually uniformly filled with scalars, carrying their eternally sparking static electricity. The unimaginable shortness of distances between scalar particles on all sides and the quantum size of static electric sparks gives human the incorrect belief that space is dark and almost empty. Interplanetary and interstellar dust, comets, asteroids, moons, planets, galaxies, and even local groups of galaxies taken together are but mere flecks of, quote, "spice," close quote, in a clear soup scalar universe. All particles larger than scalar particles are completely permeable to scalar particles. Space, empty space, is simply the interstice between dark matter scalar particle intersections. The universe-filling quantum soup provides the answer to action at a distance and is the ether and the all-pervading medium of the propagation of all particles. Even quarks and leptons are completely permeable to scalar particles. The, quote, "empty space," close quote, between moons and the planets that they circle, or between planets and the stars that they circle, or between stars and the galaxies that they circle, is not empty. The empty space between galaxies and the electromagnetic meniscal membrane bubble that is our universe is not empty. All such empty space is totally filled. All space in the universe is filled with weakly interacting, negatively charged particles, scalars. These particles are an order of magnitude smaller than any quark or lepton. Scalars make up all but less than 1/1,000,000,000 of a trillionth of all the matter and energy in the universe. Scalar particles exhibit axial, but not orbital rotation. Quarks, leptons, and every other particle in the universe pick up energy by passing through this universal quantum soup. This energy passing is by Faraday's, quote, induction, close quote. When that towering genius, H.A. Lorentz, opined that, quote, the seat of the electromagnetic force is the empty space, close quote, he hadn't seen dark matter motor test results that prove that, quote, empty space, close quote, is actually scalar quantum soup. In 1920, Einstein himself at the University of Leiden said, quote, we may say that according to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities in this sense. Therefore exists an ether, close quote, the scalar quantum soup. The, quote, universal bubble, close quote, is the product of tiny anomalies in the universe, brought about by torque, the conservation of angular momentum, electromagnetism, and gravity, sparked by compression and impingement caused curvature of the scalar particle universal matrix scaffold and friction. Dark matter energy is a dynamic and electrostatic form of electricity, created by the eternal jostling of dark matter particles. I repeat once again, dark matter particles, which are eternally dynamic due to axial spin, comprise all but a maximum of 1/trillionth of all matter and energy in the universe. One must take pains to differentiate between this static electricity, which arises from the axial spinning dark matter particles, and electronic current carried by electrons, which are made of scalar particles. Gravity and electromagnetism arise in dark matter, scalar particles. The strong force is added in atoms. Again, dark matter particles and their static electric energy are the quantum soup that fills uniformly the bubble universe. Dark matter and dark energy are sprinkled with the visible spice of the universe, which we label galaxies, stars, dust, black holes, etc. As regular matter passes within quantum distances of scalar particles, the scalar particles spit a repulsively charged bit of static electricity. The expansion of the visible matter and energy will continue to accelerate until it nears the electromagnetic meniscal boundary layer of the universe. As this visible matter and energy approaches this meniscal layer, it will be turned back towards the next big crunch. This scalar quantum soup also contains the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force, except for time periods preceding big universal crunches and small universal big bangs. This scalar quantum soup within the universal bubble from everlasting to everlasting is a home to gravity and electromagnetic energy, as I mentioned earlier here and above. Residual cosmic microwave background radiation is created by every big bang and vanishes before every big crunch. The universe exists beyond and is greater than any arbitrary large value. In that sense, it is infinite. The universe is a bubble in the void, surrounded and contained by an electromagnetic boundary layer. The void beyond is unknown. The universe is Alpha and Omega, extending from everlasting to everlasting. Dark matter energy does not become diluted anywhere in the universe. Regular matter energy does become diluted and concentrated in its eternal journeys towards big bangs and big crunches. Time and space are eternal. At the scalar level, space does not bend or warp. Neither does it expand or contract. Scalar space does become warmer and more excited, and cooler and less excited by big bangs and big crunches and the passing spice. The Naim Elamine postulate. It is long established scientific dictum that a changing electrical field produces a changing magnetic field. This phenomenon is called electromagnetism, which, for example, makes it possible to send radio signals over long distances. The electric and magnetic fields keep producing one another over and over through space. My experimental work with my dark matter motor generator prototypes says that this fundamental principle of physics is wrong. H.A. Lorentz, noted here and above as a towering genius, who was a mentor to Albert Einstein, once opined that, quote, the seat of the electromagnetic force is the empty space, close quote. As far as Lorentz's opinion went, it is now a proven by experiment truth. The scalar particle matrix of the universe has been most recently proven by the January 20, 2010 experiments conducted by Stern in Dublin. Google Stern Orbo. STEORNORBO. Einstein has also noted above at the University of Leiden said, quote, we may say that according to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, there exists an ether, close quote. Wilson-Sanders' speed of light. The speed of light is no mystery. The speed of light is simply the recorded rate of travel of photon particles through the scalar particle clear quantum soup universe. The 186,000 miles per second travel rate is the product of photon dark matter particles being pushed along with repulsive static electric charges, perhaps 4 to 6 billion times a second. As I have noted here and above, light travels at well-documented slower speeds through different types of materials, but light's photons are always fueled by repulsive scalar particle static electric sparks. Juan Moran's correction of Newton. The temperature of the clear scalar soup of empty space is almost exactly the same everywhere in our bubble universe. Why? Because temperature changes are propagated along the scalar particle matrix. It is like the heating of a cast iron skillet versus an oak wood handle. The Numa-Perrier curvature / compression of scalar space. Our sun was born from part of an interstellar gas and dust cloud, violently compressed by a supernova explosion's, quote, wind, close quote. Gravity compressed this cloud until it lit up. The exploding supernova, quote, wind, close quote, pressures thus forced the curving of the otherwise uniformly distributed scalar particles in this incredibly minute portion of the bubble universe. This compression and the torque of the axial rotation of scalar particles engendered the triggering of the conservation of angular momentum forces that have sculpted our galaxy and the universe. When exploding supernova wind pushed and curved the scalar particle matrix, it pushed back against this compression of the scalar matrix. This process takes place, obviously, throughout the universe. In brief, this set the sun to spinning. Newton, another towering genius, propounded laws of motion. What Newton did not postulate, though, is how, what energy, from where, powers the movement of physical elements of the universe that had been detected or could be detected. CERN, C-E-R-N, among others, is hunting for a massive particle called a Higgs boson that holds atoms together. The Higgs boson does not exist. Tammy Ela Universal Knitting Tips Statement. It is the scalar particles that by their repulsive static electric charges, combined with their compulsive gravitational energy, wrapped around and donating their energy to every quark, lepton, photon, dust particle, comet, asteroid, meteor, moon, planet, star, galaxy, and local group of galaxies that hold the elements of the universe together. In 1982, research results obtained by experimental testing of my team's first dark matter motor generator inexorably and immediately led me to conclude that the, quote, visible, close quote, matter and energy must be expanding towards the minuscule layer of the universe with slowly but ever increasing speed. My conclusion was validated in 1998. In 1982, my research results convinced me that Voyager 1 must be slowly but surely going faster and faster, powered by Faraday's merely nominative, quote, induction, close quote, description. Faraday just gave a name to an observed phenomenon that he had no explanation for. He could have easily named it Dorothy. I call it scalar space. I have found strong evidence that every subatomic particle and every atom in the universe is entirely composed of scalar particles in different numbers and in different arrangements. The only source of energy of every type, everywhere in the universe, is the scalar particles. The four known forces of the universe: number 1, gravity; number 2, the strong force; number 3, the weak force; and number 4, radiation, all originate from and/or are powered by scalar particles and their energy. Experimental results of testing of prototypes of my dark matter motor generator by myself, Dublin-based Stern, and J.L. Nadine all conclusively prove that the input energy is multiplied by its output energy and work. Cameron Thames, Clay C.L. Thames, and Kayla Thames analysis of black holes. There is a black hole at the center of each of the approximately 1.453 billion galaxies that we have thus far detected, and of all others of at least a certain age. When any star goes through its life cycle, its dark dust and corpse is gradually spun back into the black hole at its galaxy's gravitational center. There is no bottom to a black hole. Black holes have an event horizon at each end of their tubular shapes. As matter approaches either end of a black hole, it spins faster and faster because of the law of conservation of angular momentum, until it reaches a speed close to the speed of light. A black hole's size is represented by the circumference of its event horizons. The force of gravity is strongest in the middle of the tube of black holes and periodic universal crunches. Visible matter and energy only become invisible when they are ripped apart, passing past the event horizons of black holes. A supermassive black hole is simply a collection of black holes that have sunk to a galaxy's gravitational center or a cluster of galaxies' center. Anyone with a significant knowledge of Einstein's body of work knows that the very idea of black holes fell out of his work in 1916 on his general theory of relativity. That 1916 flash of genius is made more remarkable to me because I personally do not know of anyone who had proof of the death of a star before 1917. Moreover, how would anyone conjure the concept of a black hole absent the demise of a star? Kiana's, Kiran's, Juan's, and Michel's elucidation of cosmology. In my opinion, cosmologists are wrong when they calculate that singularities exist that contain all the mass of a black hole within an infinitely dense point that takes up no space at all. Malik's stable, steady-state universe theory. The dark matter energy of the scalar bubble universe does not expand or contract. Big bangs and big crunches are intrinsic properties of the matter composed of scalar particles in different numbers and different configurations that we know of as protons, neutrons, and electrons, and their baryonic confections. This theory of everything is but a template for the myriad modifications to scientific thought that it will engender. The, quote, cosmological constant, close quote, of Einstein's awesome imaginative genius is an intrinsic property of scalar particles and scalar energy. After visible matter and energy is turned back at the universe's minuscule layer boundary, it goes back to the center of the universe to another in an endless series of big crunch events wherein it is stripped of its strong and weak forces and its atomic structures and explodes in another of its endless series of big bangs. Dark matter energy, scalars, push and hold all larger objects towards and into the gravitational centers of nearby objects. Dark matter energy, scalars, are the repositories of electromagnetic energy. This is the source of Michael Faraday's electrical energy. scalar energy, quote, induced, close quote, electricity to flow. The cycle of universal crunches and bangs does not materially affect scalars, except for the eternal heating and cooling cycle of the crunches and bangs. The scalar quantum soup is stable but dynamic inside the electromagnetic minuscule bubble that encloses the universe. Dark matter energy scalars explain why many protons carrying positive charges can exist close to each other in a stable nucleus of an atom. They are cushioned by all of the scalar particles between them. Scalar particles are responsible for the fact that neutron stars, crushed by gravity down to 10 miles in diameter, will be so dense that 1 teaspoonful of it would weigh about 1 billion tons. The scalar dark matter energy will keep it from collapsing further. Neither time nor space began. The reason that everything in the universe is flying directly away from the Earth is a wonderful proof of Big Bangs. The speed of light is the universe's speed limit. Matter and energy are eternal. They were not, quote, created quite literally from the nothingness of curved space-time, close quote. Dark matter energy scalars preclude the possibility of the existence of a singularity. The universe exists beyond and is greater than any arbitrarily large value. In that sense, it is infinite. The universe is alpha and omega. It extends from everlasting to everlasting. The providential spacing of scalar particles and its, quote, space, close quote, provides for vast periods of time between the universe's endless series of big bangs and big crunches. This time permits the existence of life. Only God could band Orion or set the stars in place. All particles larger than scalars bend space. Stars, planets, asteroids, bullets, etc. bend space as they tunnel through it. They specifically make a circular tunnel through space, compressing it. Mitch Benjamin's Universe Made Simple. Quote, the electric field theory of Faraday and Maxwell represents probably the most profound transformation of physics since Newton's time. The existence of the field manifests itself only when electrically charged particles are introduced into it in space. Albert Einstein. Quote, the mechanical properties of the ether were at first a mystery. Then came H.A. Lorentz's great discovery. All of the phenomenon of electromagnetism, then known, could be explained on the basis of 2 assumptions. Number 1, that ether is firmly fixed in space, that is to say, unable to move at all. And 2, that electricity is firmly lodged in the mobile elementary particles. Close quote. Today, this discovery may be expressed as follows. Physical space and the ether are only different terms for the same thing. And 2, electrical fields are physical states of space. The quotations were from Albert Einstein. The additional thoughts were mine. I agree with the essence of the, quote, electric field theory of Faraday and Maxwell, close quote. I also agree with Albert Einstein's statements that the Faraday-Maxwell electric field theory was, quote, probably the most profound transformation of physics since Newton's time, close quote. I also agree that the, quote, existence of the electric field in space manifests itself only when electrically charged particles are introduced into it, close quote, by Albert Einstein. I agree with H.A. Lorentz's conclusion that number 1, quote, empty space, close quote, is not empty. It is filled with, quote, ether, close quote. Now ether is a hypothetical substance supposed to occupy all space, postulated to account for the propagation of electromagnetic waves through space. I also agree with H.A. Lorentz and Albert Einstein when they postulated that, quote, the ether is firmly fixed in space, that is to say, unable to move at all. Close quote. But for my simple clarification, as hereinafter detailed. The ether of empty space, as follows from the work of Faraday, Maxwell, Lorentz, Einstein, and a multitude of experimentalists and theoreticians, simply needs a little tweaking. I agree that the ether is firmly fixed in space throughout our bubble universe. The ether is entirely composed of scalar particles and their electromagnetic energy, compacted at quantum distances that create scalar soup scaffold inside our bubble universe. The scalar particles soup scaffolding is locked in place by gravity's compulsive forces and the repulsive/compulsive forces of electromagnetism and the eternal jostling of scalar particles as they spit static electric charges. The scalar particles themselves, as I have noted, exhibit axial but not orbital spin. My thought experiments and my practical dark matter motor development experiments cause me to differ with Lorentz in a second matter. I do not believe that, quote, electricity is firmly lodged only in the mobile elementary particles, close quote. My experimental work, as demonstrated by output energy, work and heat versus input energy, prove that scalar particles in a scalar soup scaffolding are also a seat of electricity as described here and above. The testing of my dark matter motor, as confirmed by the dark matter motor testing by Stern in Dublin and by J.L. Naudin in France, demonstrates that the input energy is multiplied as output energy and work. Stern's January 30, 2010 testing of their version of my dark matter motor/generator produced 2.7 times the electrical input energy as work and heat. The Stern motor tested on January 30, 2010 could not have been built much more simply. The dark matter motor generator will soon be manufactured, thus starting to solve all of this planet's energy problems. These machines can tap directly into the infinite free fuel of scalar particle space forever. And I say again, the dark matter motor generator models will soon be being manufactured, thus starting to solve all of this planet's energy problems. These machines can tap directly into the infinite free fuel of scalar particle space forever. The patent application, exemplary embodiment, graphic representations depict a powerful neodymium iron boron rod, permanent magnet, as a powered weight-bearing piston, cutting at right angles through the magnetic fields of relatively weak electromagnets. The electromagnet's controller first switches the electromagnet on while its south-seeking pole is opposed to the permanent magnet's north-seeking pole. The permanent magnet, as encased as part of a weight-bearing piston assembly, will accelerate upwards towards the south-seeking pole of the fixed electromagnet. Just before the opposing poles kiss with machine-shattering force, the reversible electromagnet will be mechanically switched so that the powerfully sought south pole's magnetic field will collapse and morph into becoming a repulsive north-seeking pole of the permanent magnet piston, and will serve to propel the aforesaid piston assembly away. Thus, both strokes of the weight-bearing permanent magnet piston assembly will be powered strokes. When a reversible electromagnet then is switched, so the north-seeking pole will again morph into a south-seeking pole. At that point, the more powerful magnetic field of the permanent magnet piston will again accelerate upwards to kiss the stationary electromagnet. So on and so forth will the generator/motor cycle. A fraction of the mechanical force will be converted to electrical energy by this process and will power the electromagnet. The motor generator thus will not utilize external fuel or force except to be started. My patent application's rotary dark matter motor generator works on similar principles as drawn and articulated therein. Marcus Fuller and Mitch Benjamin debunk junk science. String theory should occupy the minds of cats and science fiction creators. The Higgs boson does not exist, in my opinion. Wormholes, backwards time travel, and the 11 or so dimensions of string theory are full employment opportunities for thinkers and nothing more. Hyperinflation theory is the conception of a true genius. However, I cannot find room for it in Sanus' theory of everything or the Smith-Sanus-Benjamin theory of much. Infinite density and infinite gravity do not exist in nature. They only exist in the minds and equations of highly educated and brilliant mathematicians and others. To put it simply, singularities only exist at all because of Einstein's errant mathematical calculations. Traveling back in time is absurd. But how long can it be before governments find a way to levy taxes to achieve it? Wilson-Sanus' timeless truths. Time and space have always existed. Dark matter energy, scalars, although of low density, can answer human energy needs forever. Our bubble universe is not expanding. All humans can marvel and wonder about Goldilocks temperature zones. Patricio's amended special theory of relativity. The greatest genius who ever lived, Albert Einstein, was absolutely correct when he mathematically calculated that E equals mc squared. However, Einstein missed all but perhaps, at most, 1/1,000,000,000 of 1/1,000,000,000 of the total matter and energy of the universe. Allah's challenge. It is a mystery beyond all mysteries, though, as to how scalar particle energy sprang into existence along with space-time. The Paul Simon Levan Esquire conundrum, arising from my experimental and theoretical work in physics and cosmology, can be simply postulated. Have scalars always existed, or is there a God who created them? Paul, my mentor, knows, but he refuses to tell. David Richard Sanus, dairy farmer, goat herder.